Do you know that feeling when you think a game is absolutely amazing, but this game doesn't get the attention it deserves? Well, I know that feeling, so I'm here to tell you about what I think are the most underrated games ever. And I am very sure that there are entries on this list you never heard of. But first I want to know, what are some games you think are underrated? Let me know in the comments. To this day, I never understood why Scarlet Nexus didn't become a massive hit. This action JRPG was developed by Bandai Namco and took me by storm when it was released in 2021. It was so good that it even became my second favorite game of that year. But why is that, you might ask? In Scarlet Nexus you can choose between two protagonists, which isn't just a gimmick here. Yuito and Kasane experience very different events and travel with their own group of characters, which makes a huge difference for the excellent combat system. Scarlet Nexus' combat system is actually one of the coolest combat systems of the last 10 years, because it's incredibly deep and complex, but never overwhelming. You can throw objects at enemies with psychokinesis, summon characters for a special attack that is required for certain combat situations, perform combo attacks with other characters, and much more. The story is a simple one, but actually told in an engaging and surprisingly emotional way. So if you ask me, Scarlet Nexus has everything an action JRPG needs to be incredible, and I think it's criminally underrated. What are your thoughts on Scarlet Nexus? Did you play it? Tell me in the comments. This PS1 action adventure is heartbreakingly underrated and never got the recognition it deserved. Alana basically was Sony's take on Zelda games, and it turned out to be an incredible masterpiece. You play Alana, who finds out that he's a dreamwalker, so he can enter people's dreams and nightmares. And that's a pretty handy ability because an evil wizard kills people by giving them nightmares. So Alana enters these nightmares to save people. Besides that, there's a fantastically designed world to explore, with tons of secrets and items to find. Well, this wouldn't be a Zelda-like if you didn't get cool tools and weapons to unlock new paths and enter a variety of brilliantly designed dungeons. They are definitely the highlight of this game, since they're full of great puzzles that offer a real challenge sometimes. The story is told rather simple, but still surprises with emotional and shocking moments that are underlined by one of my favorite game soundtracks of all time. Do you know Alana, and do you also think it's underrated? Let me know in the comments. The Dotec series is well known, especially in Japan, but still, I think this series, the first 4 games in particular, are the most underrated games on the PS2. The Dotec games are single-player action RPGs set in a fictional MMORGP called The World, which is played in VR. In the beginning of the first game, the main protagonist's friend is attacked by a mysterious enemy in the game, which causes the friend to fall into a coma in real life. So the story is about finding out what happened and saving your friend. Over the course of 4 games, you experience an emotional and very philosophical story, with great written characters that all have their own deep and complex background story. The plot is one of the most gripping stories I ever experienced. While the action combat is rather simple and stiff compared to modern games, it is still fairly fun to dive into and actually pretty challenging at times. I think the series needs to come back, ideally in the form of a remaster collection, so everyone can experience this fantastic story. Did you play the Dotec games on the PS2, and if so, did you enjoy them? Tell me in the comments. This game is criminally underrated, and after all these years, it's still stuck on the PS2. What a shame! For those of you who don't know, Shadow Hearts takes place during an alternative version of the First World War. The player follows Yuri, a human that can transform into different demons. The story is mature. This game has a dark tone and overall just a unique aesthetic that is really engaging. But most importantly, the story is really emotional due to some shocking moments and memorable characters. What's really special about Shadow Hearts is the turn-based combat system, where selected actions are performed by hitting the right spots on the Judgment Ring. The better your timing, the more powerful your attacks are. The Judgment Ring combined with how enemy positions matter make for one of the best combat system in a JRPG I've ever played. Shadow Hearts Covenant is a special journey that is super underrated. Do you know the Shadow Hearts games, and do you agree that they are highly underrated? Let me know in the comments. Well, to be fair, this is one of the more well-known games on this list, so it's not like it's a hidden gem or something. But back in the day, when I first played this, I was absolutely blown away by what Square Enix created. And I think it's one of their most underrated games ever. The Dissidia spin-offs are Final Fantasy fighting games with their own story and a fantastic combat system. You have two kinds of attacks, bravery attacks and HP attacks. With the first one you gain more bravery points and lower the enemy's bravery points. This value then equals the amount of HP damage you deal. The RPG elements were absolutely addictive. Leveling up character after character and equipping them with new weapons and skills is so much fun because every character feels very unique. For me, Dissidia Duodecim is the ultimate celebration of the Final Fantasy franchise, thanks to the great cast of characters and the music from all Final Fantasy games that came out to this point. It's also the best game in the Dissidia series because of the great story mode and the amount of content. Considering the popularity of the Final Fantasy franchise, the sales for Duodecim weren't that great, and the Metacritic score of 78 is shockingly low, but I will stand by what I said. Dissidia Duodecim Final Fantasy is an underrated and brilliant game. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments. Okay, for a change, let's talk about something that isn't a JRPG, but a personal favorite of mine. Oddworld's Abe's Exodus is the second entry in the Oddworld series, and easily one of the greatest games on the PS1. You control Abe, and your task is to save as many of Abe's people, the Mudokons, as possible. You save them by first talking to them and then lead them to a nearby portal. Well, talking to them sounds simple, but it's actually what makes the series so special. You can let Abe say short sentences like hello and follow me with the right button combination, so saying the right thing at the right time is crucial to save your fellow Mudokons. And besides that, Abe is able to control a bunch of creatures, so they act for him. That way, every section in this game becomes an engaging and challenging puzzle that also requires good reflexes. All of the areas are designed masterfully so that this gem never gets boring, and the fantastic humor completes the great experience. Although this game got pretty good reviews back then, it sold less than 1 million copies, which makes this one of the most underrated games in my opinion. You know what else is underrated? Hitting that subscribe button if you enjoyed this video. What I want to know is, did you play Abe's Exodus and did you enjoy it? Tell me in the comments, I'm really curious. Do you even know Terranigma? If not, then maybe that's because this game got released relatively late in the SNES's lifecycle. The Nintendo 64 and PlayStation 1 were about to release, but Enix and Nintendo released this game in 1995 on the SNES. And unfortunately, it didn't get the attention it deserved, because many people were already playing 3D games on the PlayStation or Nintendo's new console. Terranigma is an action RPG with a very similar combat system to Secret of Mana or Seiken Densetsu 3, only more fluid. The real tragedy here is that Terranigma was such a unique game that was way ahead of its time. Your task is nothing less than to become God and create the world. For that you have to explore the underworld, beat a couple of dungeons and see the continents, animals and humans in the overworld come to life. Once the world is fully created, the whole game world changes too. Now you can explore your creation in all its beauty and with all its downsides. This unique JRPG suffered from a considerably bad release window, and therefore will always be one of the most underrated games ever. Did you play Terranigma and would you agree that this is underrated? Let me know in the comments. Okay, I talked about Tunic a bunch of times already on this channel, so I just say this. Tunic is a fantastic game that has so much to offer and is loved among fans. But most people who don't really care for indie games that much don't have this masterpiece on their radar. Tunic is one of the most unique gaming experiences I ever had, and I recommend you play this underrated gem. If you want to know more about Tunic, I linked all my videos that mention Tunic in the description. Before we look at the last entry on this list, I'm curious to know if you would agree that Tunic is underrated. Let's discuss that in the comments. Okay, I bet you never heard of this game before. Lord of Arcana is a PSP JRPG by Square Enix that took heavy inspiration from Monster Hunter, only that this game is full of references from Final Fantasy. The gameplay loop is pretty similar to that of Monster Hunter, but in Lord of Arcana you don't fight big monster after big monster, but several gods that function as the real bosses. In between that there are smaller, less dangerous enemies, and this is where Lord of Arcana differs from Monster Hunter. Instead of seamlessly transitioning into combat, you enter a separate battle arena, much like the older turn-based JRPGs. The combat is a little bit clunky, but still super fun, thanks to a great variety of weapons and the enemies that require you to attack certain body parts. It's as challenging as Monster Hunter and comes with the same addictive loot system, where enemies drop body parts that can be crafted into new equipment. Honestly, I'm not sure why this game didn't get much attention, but I would love to see Square Enix remastering this underrated gem for modern consoles. Do you know Lord of Arcana, and if so, what are your thoughts on it? Let me know in the comments. There you have it, the 9 most underrated games of all time. What do you think is the most underrated game? Let's discuss that in the comment section. Hit subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.